Now, welcome to Biztech's Investor Conversation Show. Today, we speak to Hsiang Low, the head of Asia Pacific at SeedLegals. SeedLegals is a tech-enabled platform that automates the legal documentation to transform the way businesses raise investment, hire and retain talent, and help them grow faster as well. Now, to tell us more, welcome to the show, Hsiang.
Hi, Brian. Nice to meet you and great to be here.
Now, Hsiang, give us an overview of SeedLegals and its history.
Sure. SeedLegals is an automated legal tech platform. It was founded in the UK 5 years ago by two entrepreneurs, or an entrepreneur and an investor, who basically came to this vision with a simple problem they were trying to solve. And that is, every time they were trying to make an investment into a new startup or to start a new startup, they encountered lawyers, and they encountered the need to go through the loops, the hoops with these lawyers to create term sheets, do documents, sign things. And what they found, being serial entrepreneurs, was that it was always the same thing. And so that's where SeedLegals was founded. Actually, why can't we automate all of these things that need to be automated? Fast forward 5 years later, we're now the largest closer of funding rounds in the UK. We also have a presence in France, Ireland, Hong Kong, and Singapore.
Okay, so you do 1 in 6 early stage funding rounds in the UK. That's a very impressive number. Talk to us about the tech ecosystem in the UK and what do you attribute your key success factors to, because that's a very impressive number.
Thank you. A number of things. Well, first of all, it's the ease of the platform, right? We came to it trying to solve the problem for the end customer, being the startup founder. And at the time, the startup founder had one of two options. Either he or she would go online and download free online templates, or they would go to an expensive law firm. The free online templates meant that they were going on and trying to fill in the blanks. And at the time, what you would often find is that a lot of these templates were Silicon Valley based. So it would say governing law is, of the states of California or New York. And being a non-lawyer, they would just change New York to the UK, to England and Wales, and then not really thinking about the rest of the document. And of course, that potentially leads them into quite hot soup later on. Or they go to law firms, and then, as you know, it's a sort of 6-minute billing increments. It's expensive. There are hidden fees, and you kind of don't know how expensive it's going to cost you. So for the startup founder who's capital shy at the very beginning, it's a very big dichotomy, right? What am I going to do? And that's why when we came in, we were like, no, we're going to solve for this problem. We're going to give transparent fees. We're going to tell you exactly how much it's going to cost you up front. We're also going to align the business model with the startup. So we have unlock fees. So we charge you a minimum to get going, and then it's a percentage of whatever amount you're going to be raising later on. So there's a lot more alignment with the way that you're raising capital. We're also approaching it from what else does a founder need to get going? So a founder, assuming he's not a lawyer, or she wasn't a lawyer in a previous life, probably doesn't know what they don't know. And so when a customer comes to us on SeedLegals, they interact with a human being on the other end. They interact with an expert. And that expert goes through a discovery process to understand the business of the customer, the startup, and they'll make suggestions of what else that this startup founder might need to put in place. So what we often like to say is, before you do your fundraising, you need to get your house in order. You need to ensure that your IP is protected. You need to ensure that you've got your employment agreements, your founder agreements, and all of these things are important to not just to protect the startup founder, but also when an investor comes and looks in under the hood, they want to know that the startup is well protected under the hood. And then that's where a lot of the secret sauce is. We're really thinking about the startup, and we're trying to help them put all of these things in place. And once that's in place, actually, when you go out there and take your term sheet to go to your investor, you're ready. You can get going, and the capital starts to hopefully flow in. Another attribute that I think has really added to the secret sauce in the UK is we've got to a point where SeedLegals has become a brand name. And
how did that happen?
How did that happen? So, okay, I'd say a number of things, right? One is we looked at making it as seamless as possible, right? On both sides. So easy for the founder to come on board, create all their legals, say it's automated, but also easy for the investor. It's an ecosystem after all, it's not just one-sided. So the investor can come on, there's a digital platform, they're not scrounging around in emails looking for, which term sheet am I reviewing or which subscription agreement do I need to sign? Everything is just in one place. We've got an integrated data room in there. So when I'm trying to make an investment in this startup, I can look at all the other documents that I need to look at. I e-sign the thing and off I can go to the next investor and everything is just in one place. That's one thing that we've done. The other thing that we've done is we've made it as much as possible a one-click solution. We know there are lots of VCs, lots of investors in the world and in the UK. We talk about the UK where we started out. And where these investors are regular repeat investors, a lot of them will have their own terms that they need to incorporate in these investment docs. And so what we've done is incorporated these as specific provisions. And so if you come to me and say, as a startup founder and say, actually, the investors that I have are A, B, and C, and if A, B, and C is an investor that we've seen before, we'll have automated their terms into our documents. And so as a startup founder, I can say, that I need to get investment from A. I click on A and A's terms will be incorporated in my investment docs. That makes it super seamless for both sides. There's no sort of trading documents back and forth. There's no sort of running, black lines and compares and all of that. And for the investor, they rest assured as well. They've seen SeedLegals before. They've seen our documents, so they don't need to spend endless hours reviewing legal terms. In fact, what they're doing is just focusing on the commercial terms. So as a lawyer in my previous life, a current life as well, I always found it crazy how much time I'm having to review the same types of terms again and again, just because people draft them and trying to say the same thing in different language. It doesn't make sense. And yet it still requires me to spend the same number of hours to read it just because you said the same thing in different ways.
Exactly. And that's always been a problem with the legal fraternity. The fact that basically you're going through largely template terms and template transactions, but you actually have to go through them again and again.
Yeah.
And you're charged for it. The clients are charged for it, unfortunately.
And there's no other way around it, right? So I'd say some one word might be hidden in there, a missing comma might be hidden in there, and that changes the meaning of the language. And that's the risk where you have someone trying to be creative and express their drafting skills, writing skills, sitting at your desk. So that's why we're very much about automation and templates, right? It's not about trying to restrict investors from making the commercial decisions. No, it's actually about making smarter investments, making it much better, much cleaner. Everybody knows what they're getting. It's just transparent. And that's where the power of templates comes in. We're not, one thing that often comes up when we talk about templates is, actually, then how can I get my bespoke terms in there? Or actually, won't I be very restricted in terms of how I make my investments? Well, the stats speak for itself, right? We, as you said, as you already quoted, 1 in 6 funding rounds. We've had 35,000 startups and investors use us over that time. Now, if the 35,000 startups and investors aren't going to be using us if we're overly restrictive and not protecting their investments. And so that's the proof that we've actually built in enough customization into these templates to allow you to achieve whatever commercial terms you want to achieve.
Okay. Hsiang, that's really interesting and leads us to the market entry into the Asia Pacific region last year, focusing on Hong Kong and Singapore. Tell us about your go-to-market strategy in Asia.
Yeah. Well, where do I start? I guess, why Singapore? Why Hong Kong? I think that's a good place to start. First of all, we scoured the world, and honestly, we could have gone anywhere, right? Startup activity, when we were looking at this hot across the geographies. We picked Singapore and Hong Kong when we looked at Asia, primarily because they're the financial centers of Asia. That's reason number one. Reason number two is we're primarily providing a legal service. And so the certainty of laws, the established court systems in Singapore and Hong Kong really play a big role in all of this. And it plays a big role, obviously not for us, but for the ecosystem. Investors are attracted to this certainty of law. And so when we were doing our strategy planning, noted that investors would, no matter where they sit, they would want to invest via a vehicle in Singapore or invest via Hong Kong. And so examples like an Indonesian startup with their operating company in Indonesia would incorporate a Singapore holdco so that investors can invest via that Singapore holdco. And also looking at where investors live, right? It's not just about the legals. Like, people live in these cities for personal reasons, family, lifestyle. We can't ignore that. So Singapore and Hong Kong was a no-brainer for us. And then as a startup ourselves, we're a scale up now, we're at 5 years. It's also looking at low-hanging fruit, as startups like to say. We don't want to go somewhere which is going to make it hard for us to localize. Hong Kong, Singapore, English language is the primary language for business.
And also British common law is the
exactly, that's
foundation.
right, British common law. And so it made it easy for us to go to market in terms of localizing the product, product familiarity. Didn't require too much customization from us. In terms of coming into the market, that's been super interesting. What's different about Hong Kong and Singapore is the huge government support that is provided here to the startup ecosystem. Both governments are very focused on bootstrapping, on providing funding, grants, education into the ecosystem. And that's directly to startups as well as to ecosystem players like accelerators and incubators and investors, making it attractive for investors to come into Singapore or Hong Kong. And so when we were developing our go-to-market, we noted this fundamental difference. And so we had to make sure we plug ourselves into all of that. And so partnerships first has been a key play. Whereby we form quite strategic partnerships with these ecosystem players to ensure that there's a lot more of a seamlessness in terms of the startups trying to access these services.
What sort of players have you partnered with as you've rolled out in Asia?
Yeah, I probably don't want to name anyone specifically to avoid biasness, but it's accelerators primarily, right? These are the guys that are working with startups and they see them day in, day out. And they're looking to provide this kind of service, and SeedLegals integrates very nicely with that offering.
Okay. What sort of traction do you have in Asia right now? Give us some numbers and companies that are using your solution since you've arrived last year.
Yeah, so we soft launched last year, but honestly, we've actually only just had a full launch a couple of weeks ago. Okay. So the numbers are still coming through. In terms of traction and interest, it's been incredibly high. Right? Every meeting we've had, people have said, "Oh my gosh, why has this solution not been around for the last 3 years?" As I said, the dichotomy that existed 6 years ago before SeedLegals was founded was also here last year before we came in Asia. And so we're super excited. We've got going just a couple of weeks ago. We've now got our full service offering available. We're starting to get the customers through the door and really getting going now.
So now it's really marketing time, getting the awareness out across the region.
That's right. Yeah. And that's an interesting thing. You used the word marketing. Actually, another part of our go-to-market is rather than think of it as marketing, it's education, right? What we're doing is disrupting a market, disrupting the way that people consume legal services. And the way you disrupt is to educate, right? Yeah. Now we're saying to consumers, both on the startup side and investors, actually, there's a better way of doing what you were doing previously, and that is to use a digital solution like SeedLegals. The advantage for the consumers here in Asia is that it's also a proven service that has already existed in the UK. So in a sense, it's a little bit easier to buy the service now because they can see that actually it's worked before in a different market.
Now, the funding environment globally has gone from summer to winter, literally overnight, because of obviously the geopolitical situation around inflation, the tech sell-off, valuations are completely changed compared to just 3 months ago. Give us your thoughts in terms of what should founders focus on pre-funding and during the fundraising process.
Yeah, I think this is actually a great opportunity for startups to look within and consolidate. Pre-funding, I'd say the most important thing, get your house in order. Make sure that your fundamentals are there, both on the legal and non-legal side. So legal side, make sure your contracts are properly documented, signed. Again, just the key one, for example, with founders here in the region, startups like to start up with their best mate, right? I went to school with this guy. I've known him for 20 years. Yeah, he's my best mate. Let's start the startup. It'll be fine. No, it's not going to be fine. Get a founders agreement in place. Make sure you've documented the terms between the two of you, because at some point, someone's going to have a dispute. Someone might have a family crisis. You might fall out. And investors are savvy to this, right? So if you don't have that founders agreement in place, they're going to look at you and say, actually, you're not investable, because what if you guys have that dispute? Then the whole thing falls apart. So there's some very key fundamentals that you can already do now, pre-funding. Another thing pre-funding that is important for startups to understand is, well, what does fundraising actually mean for you? It's not just about, oh, I need $1 million, but it's understanding what you're going to be giving away for those $1 million, understanding what you're going to be asking for those $1 million. And that's where looking through investor term sheets and understanding what each of these terms mean. When an investor asks you for a board seat, well, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Actually, it's a good thing. And strategically for you down the line, giving away a board seat today might be a really good thing. Why? Ask yourself why. Learn about those things before you go into the fundraising round, and then you can, you're well equipped. So educate yourself is very important. And then during the fundraising round, I'd say things like, ensure your fundamentals are visible. As you said, we're going through this winter, as you called it. So what we're seeing is that investors are now looking at signs of traction, signs of revenue, making sure that your business model is solid. Those fundamentals that honestly should always have been there is even more important now.
Now, looking ahead, what are SeedLegals' key objectives for the Asia Pacific region for 2022-2023? Because you've just launched, you're in expansion mode, scale up mode. What are your key objectives? What do you hope to achieve?
Yeah, I think it's, well, first and foremost, making ourselves known, educate, as I said earlier, that there is a different and better way of doing things through a digital platform, really establishing that in the region. So we're going to start with Singapore and Hong Kong, and that's the goal for this year and next year. But really, nobody comes to Asia and only stays in 1 or 2 countries, right? We also know that startup activity in the regional Southeast Asian region, so places like Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, they're key to startup hotbed activity in this region, and they're also within our periphery region vision. And so for us, it's about figuring out how we expand into those regions in a systematic way, still using Singapore and Hong Kong as our core locations, using, as I said right at the beginning of this, the fact that this is where there's certainty of law, where the investors are attracted, and then bringing and helping those startups in those Southeast Asian regions to raise capital. The long-term vision for us really is that we want to make investment borderless. You can be sitting as an investor sitting in Denmark, trying to invest in a startup in Indonesia using a Singaporean holdco. If we can do that, that would be a dream come true.
It's been a fascinating conversation, Hsiang, and that's a great vision. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave us or share with us before we end the interview?
I'd say, there's still a lot of opportunity for startups. We may be going through a fundraising winter at the moment, but there is a lot of opportunity still. So, we're very excited about the possibilities. We're really excited about the activity that's happening in the startup ecosystem, and we're so glad to be here and to be a part of it.
Now, Hsiang, thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show.
Thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, I'm Brian Fernandez, and we've been speaking to Hsiang Low, the head of Asia Pacific at SeedLegals, on Biztech's Investor Conversation Show. This video will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our social media platforms. Please like and subscribe to our various platforms. Thanks for tuning in.